Last year, the World Health Organization made the proclamation that there is no safe level of alcohol consumption. And this statement has really jump-started a conversation over whether or not we should be consuming alcohol at all, even at moderate levels. It has led some people to drastically cut back or completely eliminate alcohol, and other people are really downplaying the risks, saying, well, everything causes cancer, and they drink in the blue zone, so clearly it can't be that bad. And I think this large dichotomy really demonstrates the failure in messaging around alcohol. We very rarely get exposed to an accurate and nuanced discussion about what the research actually shows in terms of increased risks. And I think that's a really important discussion to have so that people can make an educated decision about whether or not they want to include alcohol, and if so, how much and how often. So in this video, let's get into the details of exactly how alcohol consumption affects your cancer risk. I will also be taste testing a bunch of non-alcoholic IPAs at the end of this video, so stick around if you want to find out whether or not these new booze-free alternatives are worth your money. To start off with, let's cover a few definitions. What is classified as a drink might be a little bit less alcohol than what you might think. One drink is defined as 12 ounces of 5% beer, 5 ounces of 12% wine, or 1.5 ounces of 80 proof liquor. One thing to keep in mind is that in many places, beer is served in a pint glass, which is 16 ounces, and at least in the US, most craft beers these days are higher than 5% alcohol. When I lived in Colorado, it seemed like 7% was really the average ABV. And so, if you had a full 16-ounce pint of a 7% beer, that's almost like drinking 2 drinks, not 1. Additionally, most bars will use 2 ounces for a cocktail instead of 1.5. So it's really important to keep these definitions in mind when you're trying to compare your alcohol habits to what is shown in research. Now, the research is overwhelming and pretty much unanimous that chronic heavy alcohol use is really detrimental to the body. It can substantially increase the risk of pancreatitis, liver disease, nutritional deficiencies, damage to the GI tract, cardiovascular risks, and cancer. Heavy drinking is defined by the NIH as being more than 5 drinks in one day or 15 drinks in 1 week for men, or being more than 4 drinks in a day or 8 drinks in a week for women. And when it comes to the risks associated with this pattern of drinking, really, the more you drink, the higher the risks are. And so there's no two ways around it. That level of alcohol consumption is really not safe if you're doing it consistently and over a long period of time. But what if you're someone who doesn't drink that much? What if you're someone who has a glass or 2 of wine with dinner, or maybe you don't drink during the week, but you do like to go out and have a few beers with friends on weekends? This pattern of alcohol consumption would fall into that moderate drinking pattern, which is defined as 1 drink a day for women or 2 drinks a day for men. And historically, this level of alcohol consumption has not been associated with increased health risks. However, in that World Health Organization press briefing where they said that there is no safe level of alcohol consumption, they noted that over half of all cancers attributed to alcohol consumption were caused by that light or moderate consumption pattern, which sounds pretty scary. However, it also appears to be a typo because the Lancet article that this press briefing was promoting actually says that only 13.3% of alcohol attributable cancers were caused by this consumption level, which is quite a bit different than half. But 13.3% is still pretty significant, so let's take a closer look at the numbers. When controlling for appropriate confounding factors such as diet quality, exercise, age, family history, smoking status, etc., we see that there is not a statistically significant increase in the risk of getting cancer at all in your lifetime at that moderate level of consumption. However, there is a significant stepwise increase in risk with each additional drink beyond that 1 to 2 drinks per day level. However, alcohol consumption only causes certain types of cancers, and so it's really, really important to look at how the risk of getting those types increases with alcohol consumption. And when we zoom in on the increase in risk of getting these types of cancers, we do see that there is a statistically significant increase in risk even at that moderate consumption level. For men who are drinking that 2 drink a day limit or less, there is an increase in risk of getting an alcohol-related cancer of 26%. But that is an average increase in risk across all types of cancer. Moderate alcohol consumption can have a variable effect on the risk of getting each type of cancer. So for some types of cancer, there's not much of an increased risk at all, whereas for head and neck cancer, it can almost double your risk. And that might sound like a really huge increase, but it's important to put that into context because head and neck cancer is still pretty darn rare. According to CDC, the rate of head and neck cancer is only 11 cases per 100,000 people. So doubling that risk still makes it pretty unlikely that you're going to get that type of cancer. For women who drink at a moderate level, we see a 13% increase in alcohol-related cancer risk, and that is almost 100% driven by breast cancer. And to put that into some actual numbers, the average risk of getting breast cancer in somebody's lifetime is about 13%, or a 1 in 8 chance. So a 13% increase in that risk would raise your risk from 13% to about 14.7%. Or that would be like going from a 1 in 8 chance of getting breast cancer to a 1 in 7 chance of getting breast cancer. When it comes to higher levels of intake beyond having 1 drink a day at that moderate consumption level, studies show that there's about a 7.1% increase in breast cancer risk with each additional daily drink. Now, a really common question is, what if you're not drinking every day? What if instead of having one drink a day, you have a few drinks on the weekend? How does that affect risk? Well, to that, there's a few things you should consider. First, the total number of drinks that you have in a week appears to be a very large driver of this increase in cancer risk. And so if daily consumption, even at low levels, means that you're having more drinks per week, then it might actually be more efficacious for you to drink more drinks less often, so long as your total alcohol consumption is lower. However, binge drinking does appear to have a much larger impact on risk than having alcohol consumption be more spread out. And the reason for that is because when you're drinking a lot all at once, it results in a much higher blood alcohol level. So when studies controlled for the number of beverages consumed in a week, what they found was that the number of days that you drank in a week did not significantly increase cancer risk. However, the number of drinks you had per sitting did. So, putting this all together, what the studies seem to suggest is that it is much better to have one drink every day, resulting in 7 drinks, than it is to have 7 drinks crammed into 1 or 2 days on the weekend. However, it is probably better to have 2 drinks on Saturday and 2 drinks on Sunday and nothing throughout the week than it is to have 1 drink every single day, because the total consumption would be 4 drinks versus 7. So putting this all together, yes, there does appear to be an increase in cancer risk even at low levels of alcohol consumption. However, studies don't support the idea that if you include some small amounts of alcohol in your lifestyle, that you are absolutely going to get cancer as a result. When it comes to somebody's absolute risk for getting cancer, it is the totality of your lifestyle that is going to be driving that risk. So somebody who doesn't drink, but they smoke, they eat a lot of processed red meat, they don't exercise, and they eat minimal amounts of fruits and vegetables in their diet is probably going to have a higher cancer risk than somebody who eats a very plant-rich diet, who exercises regularly, who's never smoked in their life, but has a glass of wine with dinner most nights. And ultimately, it's up to you to take the numbers from the research and decide what level of risk you're comfortable with. Cancer risk is only one way in which alcohol can actually affect our physiology and our health. Alcohol can also have a big impact on our gut microbiome, on our reproductive health, and on exercise physiology. And so if you're interested in learning more about those topics, definitely hit that subscribe button so that you don't miss out. But regardless, when it comes to alcohol consumption, there's always going to be a benefit of consuming less. And including some non-alcoholic beverage alternatives can be a really great way to cut back on the amount of alcohol you're having without necessarily changing the habit or cutting back on pleasure. So let's taste some. So now let's get into the taste test. Now, some of you may not know that before I became a dietitian, I was actually working in the service industry for 9 years. And 3 of those years were spent working as a bartender at a very high-end beer bar. And so as I'm going through these beers, the things I'm going to be focusing on are the body and mouthfeel, the complexity of flavor, and how true to style it is. We're also going to be comparing them to an actual alcoholic beer. So let's start with this Sierra Nevada Trail Pass. Now, I've never really been a huge fan of Sierra Nevada just because I tend to like more of the East Coast juicier IPAs rather than the stronger, more West Coast piney IPAs, but I do appreciate one of these now and again. So let's crack into it and give it a try. So it's got a pretty good color and a pretty good head, and it smells like an IPA to me. So this is pretty good. It certainly has some IPA qualities, so it is on the more citrusy and piney side, and you definitely get a good hop flavor. It's very crisp and refreshing, but it isn't as bitter or as strong as a lot of West Coast IPAs might be. Next up, we're going to try this Peak Interest APA from 1820 Brewing Company. Now, this one definitely has a more robust flavor than the Sierra Nevada. It has a much stronger, pinier, more bitter hop. You still probably will feel that this is a little bit lighter than a regular IPA if you're somebody who's used to drinking double IPAs, because those tend to be a much stronger flavor. If I were to compare it to the Sierra Nevada, I would say that this 1821 tastes more like an IPA, but I think I like the flavor profile of the Sierra Nevada better, even if it's a much lighter. Like if I was really wanting to get into a beer or an IPA, I would choose the 1820, but if I were just to pick a beverage that I like the taste of better, I would probably pick the Sierra Nevada. Now let's compare that to Wayfinder, which is an IPA by that same brewing company, 1820. Oops, spilling it. Get the bar rag out. All right. This doesn't smell like an IPA to me. I'm not really getting much in terms of hops, but we'll see. To me, this doesn't taste like an IPA at all. It tastes more like a hoppy blonde. You get some bitterness, but you don't really get a defined like citrusy, piney, or fruity hop flavor. It's just the bitterness without necessarily the hop quality. And you do get a little bit of like a bready flavor on the back end. It does taste like beer, it just doesn't taste like an IPA in terms of style. Next up, we're going to do the Pointer IPA by Woodland Farms Brewery. This one was a little bit more expensive, but it also comes in a tall can, but it only comes in a 4-pack. Again, this doesn't really smell that much like an IPA to me. I'm not getting much in terms of hops. That doesn't taste like an IPA, but it's really good. It's very crisp and refreshing. There's a little bit of like a fruit note. And you do get a little bit of the hop flavor in terms of floral notes. Like I would say this does taste pretty floral. There's not really much in terms of bitter. So if you like kind of that floral, sort of fruity, hoppy quality in an IPA, but you're not a huge fan of the bitter quality, you might really like this. Yeah, it's just not super beer-y, but it's a great beverage. Next, we're going to try the Strata by the same brewery. And another IPA. We'll see if this one is closer to an IPA flavor. Still not smelling any hops on the nose, so maybe not, but yeah, it doesn't taste much like beer to me. It's pleasant. This feels a little bit more like an adult iced tea kind of flavor. It's kind of sweet. It's floral. It's a little bit juicy. It has a very, very light flavor. Like this feels a little bit more like beer flavored seltzer than it does like a beer. But I feel like I'm getting hydrated, if that makes sense. If I compare it to the other one from the same brewery, I definitely like this one better. This one is just too light. Next up, we have the Two Roads IPA. Now this says juicy on it, and I feel like one of my biggest complaints with beer and non-alcoholic beer is when it says when it says juicy and it's not juicy. Like if it says juicy, I want it to have a fruit forward quality. My guess is that with this beer and the other ones after that are all juicy quality, we're getting a little bit further away from the West Coast IPA style. But I feel like even if you're not doing a West Coast IPA and you're trying to go for something that's fruit forward and more East Coasty, hazy, etc., you should still taste the hops. I think that's my feeling. But I do smell a little bit of hop on this one, so that's promising. I keep getting it on my nose. All right. Well, that's pretty nice. Again, not a strong hop on this. This definitely falls a little bit more into the hazy, juicy IPA. This one has a sweeter body. So if you're looking for a sweeter IPA that's not as piney, not as bitter, this is probably a better way to go. It is very pleasant and you do get some hop. I feel like of the ones we've tasted so far, it is probably the most similar to the Sierra Nevada. I like the Sierra Nevada a little bit better, I think. Sierra Nevada is a little sweet, but not as sweet. But you get hop in this. Like this does, especially like now that I've had some of the other ones, I'm tasting the hop in this more now that I'm tasting a bunch of other beers that aren't that hoppy. It has a reasonable body to it. Yeah, if you want a not too bitter, slightly juicier, sweeter IPA, this would be okay. This would do the job. Yeah, comparing these two, this one tastes more like beer. This one tastes more like tea. Next up, we have the Gruvi Juicy IPA. Now on the can, it says to gently roll your juicy IPA. So let's do that. It says on here, tropical, pineapple, bright hops. So I hope it tastes like pineapple and bright hops. This smells like juice. I don't smell hops on the nose. I really like that actually. I am more partial to fruit forward IPAs. So if you don't like a fruit forward IPA, you will not like this. It is very fruit forward. So I definitely do taste kind of the pineapple, maybe some strawberry in there. It is very fruity. It does have a bitter on the back end. It kind of feels like if you were to mix juice and seltzer and then dry hop it. It does have a very full flavor, so I would say this one compared to some of the other ones tastes a lot less watery, which is a big positive for me. But again, if you are somebody who likes a strong piney IPA, this ain't it. This is very juicy. Last but not least, we have the Sam Adams. Now, I will say that I'm a little bit biased because I drink this one all the time, mostly because it is so available, so I can get it at most stores. And of the ones that are usually available in stores, this is the one I tend to like the best. I've not really taste tested it against other things though. Yeah, I don't smell hops. And I know for a fact this is not going to be a particularly hoppy one. I feel like in terms of all the other ones, this one absolutely has the strongest, most full-bodied, most intense flavor. It is very juicy and not very hoppy. So I would say in terms of this tasting like an IPA, it doesn't taste like an IPA. Or it tastes like an IPA that somebody who doesn't like IPAs would drink, rather. But that said, I really like the flavor. It is sweet. It does have a good complex flavor. There's a lot of good floral notes to it. There's not much in terms of bitterness. So if that's something that you like out of an IPA, this is not it. But if what you're looking for is something that is fruity without being cloying, and you want something that's going to really fill your mouth with flavor, I would say this one does that. I would say that these two are the closest to compare to. If I were to compare them, the hop freshness, This is more juicy. This is, I mean, like, and I mean juicy in terms of like this tastes the most like juice. It has a more specifically fruity flavor, whereas this is more fruity in the way that a fruit forward hazy IPA would be fruity, where it's not actually fruit. This tastes like it has been fruited. It does have more hot bitterness than this one though. I would say choose your adventure with these two. All right, so let's recap here. This one here was probably my least favorite. It's not very hoppy and it didn't really have a big bold flavor. It also had a bit of a bready quality, which for me personally is not my favorite quality in a beer, but if you like the bready quality, this is the only one that had that. This one tasted like floral tea. It was not a beer. I would say in terms of hops, if you are a West Coast IPA fan, these are the two that you would want to seek to, because I would say that these two are the only ones that really had any piney, citrusy hop flavor to them. This one again is not really a beer, but was a very pleasant beverage, I'll say. Now, in terms of the ones that I think were my personal favorites, I would say it would be in no particular order, it'd be the Gruvi, the Sam Adams, the Two Roads, and the Sierra Nevada. So the Sierra Nevada and the Two Roads, I think, tasted the most like a beer. They tasted the most like an IPA. They had more of the hop flavor. These two were much more fruit forward. This one was kind of also fruit forward. So if you like a fruit forward IPA that actually tastes like an IPA, this would probably be a good bet for you. This one also as well, if you wanted a fruited IPA rather than a fruit forward IPA. And this one I just like because I feel like this fills the mouth with flavor the most, which I think is the biggest thing that I don't love about non-alcoholic beer, is that the complexity of flavor is not as good. But now, let's compare them to an actual beer. Okay. Yeah, see, it's a good thing I didn't drink this first. So, an actual beer has a lot more of a mouthfeel, so it kind of coats the tongue. It has a much more complex flavor, and it has this sweetness that feels a lot more rich. If I were to compare, I would say the Sierra Nevada is actually really not that far off. It does have the sweet quality. It's not as intense as the actual beer. I would say that it has just as much of a good hop quality. It might actually have a more robust hop quality than this specific beer. And for me, because I have actually gone from alcoholic beer to non-alcoholic beer a couple of times, but never with this beer, if you handed me this and then you handed me this, I might not know this was non-alcoholic. Yeah, I might not know. It's less intense, but this is really close. Let's see. This one feels notably lighter. Yeah, so like if I go from this to this tastes a little bit watery. So it's close, but it is not as close as the Sierra Nevada. See, now this one just tastes like juice. This one has the same intensity and robust flavor, which again is why I like this one. That said, compared to an IPA, it just doesn't taste like an IPA. This one tastes a little bit like fruity candy. This one has, I would say, the most fake flavor. I don't think it's bad though. So I would say that compared to an actual beer, the Sierra Nevada is the clear winner. This one definitely tastes the most like an actual beer. So if you see this, I think it's definitely worth trying. So if there are some brands that you really like or you've seen on the shelves but you've been a little bit too nervous to spend the money on, put that in the comment section below, because I would absolutely love to do more of these taste tests. I think they're super fun. And it doesn't have to be limited to beer. I would really love to do some taste tests of wines and liquors as well. So throw those ideas in the comment section and I will take the bullet and spend the cost and let you know if it's worth your money. Until next time.